Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to tonight's event. My name is Rebecca Judd, and I serve as the Library Director for the City of Bellingham at the Bellingham Public Library. We are so grateful that you have chosen to share and spend your evening with us, to learn about and to talk about this important topic. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment and express my gratitude to Helen Koenig, our musician tonight. Thank you, Helen, thank you. Thank you for setting the tone for the evening and for sharing your talents with us. I would also like to acknowledge that all of us here this evening, we gather on territory that has been the traditional and ancestral homeland to the Lummi people, the Nooksack people, and other Coast Salish tribes of this area since time immemorial. We honor our shared responsibility to this land and these waters. We commit to learning from Indigenous wisdom, and we strive to repair and deepen our relationships as neighbors and friends. As an overview, for tonight's program, we will begin with a prayer blessing with Anton and Panelists George from the Lummi Nation West Shore Canoe family. Following their blessing, we'll welcome Erica Lautenbach, Director of the Whatcom County Health and Community Services, to the podium to say a few words, and then introduce Dr. Shannon Boustead. After Dr. Boustead's presentation and keynote address, we'll move into a panel discussion with physicians who are deeply committed to the work and with community members who honor us by sharing their lived experience with addiction. Finally, we'll share the questions you all have submitted to our panelists with apologies in advance if we are not able to share them all. And now it is my honor and pleasure to welcome Anton and Panelists George to the stage.
I'd like to first off by saying good evening to everyone. And I was just a few moments ago, I was sitting up here with my son, and a familiar face came and sat by me. And I was wondering where I knew him from. And it was about 13 years ago, I guess, about that. My youngest daughter was experimenting with life, and she ended up being addicted. And she was a minor at that time. And Dr. Cartman was out there at the Lummi Care Office on the reservation, along with Rosalie Scott, Josie Jones. But they made an exception to put my daughter on Suboxone with my consent as her parent, and, I want to, again, thank you for the ones that are all like in that field of helping people, because it really does help. I believe that it saved my daughter's life. I believe that, if it wasn't for, us being able to go to the Lummi Care and reach out, and, she went to treatment not long after that over in Spokane and came home, and she's been good since. And to me, that's the greatest gift, because we always say that, our kids, they're our strength, but then again, they're a different generation from a lot of us in here. We don't know what goes on in a person's heart and mind, even if we live in the same roof, under the same roof, and we don't know what a person's going through day in and day out, the demons that they face. And all we could do is pray and not judge. Pray for them and not judge. We're always told that there's only one judge, and that's Creator God. And we can't turn our back or turn a cheek on this what a lot of our families and our communities face, because, you know, they're human beings just like we are. We're all subject to mistakes in our lives, and how we pick ourselves up and dust ourselves off, you know, that determines on how our surroundings are too. Because, you know, a lot of times, you know, we always say that, you know, addiction, you don't need to have a certain skin color. You don't need to be in a certain lifestyle. You know, it can reach any home out here. But we just really give thanks today for being able to be here today and share this time. And, you know, I hope and pray that, you know, a lot is learned from this, that we can continue helping our people far and near, not only in these communities here, but all over, because, you know, it feels like a losing battle, but then again, you know, I think of my daughter, you know, that, you know, one's like Dr. Cartman that gave her that chance. So, Hashkasiyam. Hashka, thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight and for caring about this issue and our community with your desire to learn more. My name is Erica Lautenbach. I'm the Director of Whatcom County Health and Community Services, formerly known as the Health Department. Our department has long worked to prevent substance use disorder through school prevention coalitions and early childhood family intervention and support. We also provide services to people who are in the fight through mental health court, LEAD, law enforcement assisted diversion, our GRACE program, our alternative response, which is a behavioral health response to 911 calls, our co-responder program with sheriff deputies, harm reduction programs, and our street medicine and outreach programs. The drugs of today are deadlier and more damaging than anything we've seen. and prompted action from both the city and the county councils, as well as executive orders from Bellingham Mayor and Whatcom County Executive. I want to thank the Lummi Indian Business Council and our partners in health at Lummi Nation for leading not only our community but our nation in sounding the alarm about the suffering and destruction of families and lives caused by the cheap, available, and deadly drugs on our streets. As a result of these actions by our local elected officials, Health and Community Services has doubled down on our commitment to addressing this from a prevention, intervention, treatment, and aftercare or recovery continuum, and have provided more transparency around data, resources, and availability of life-saving Narcan or naloxone in the past few months. More is to come. I want to thank my colleagues at Health and Community Services, many of them are here, who tabled tonight and have been involved with a lot of events to spread the awareness around this issue. It may feel overwhelming to see someone struggling on the street or in your family and think, how can they overcome this? Is there reason for hope? Is a different outcome possible? In that moment on the street, you may see someone in the throes of the worst point in their life. But isn't it a gift of life that we each contain multitudes, that we can transcend the worst that's ever happened to us, as our panelists tonight have? I'm looking forward to hearing your stories of challenge, hope, and healing. But in the meantime, I'd like to introduce an incredible asset and a colleague of mine in our community, Dr. Shannon Boustead. Dr. Boustead has worked in our community prescribing medication for opioid use disorder and supporting people in their recovery journey from a whole person perspective. If you're in recovery in our community, you probably know Shannon and his kindness, straightforwardness, and dogged persistence in your success. He is now leading an initiative through our department to increase the number of healthcare providers who prescribe medication for opioid use disorder, or MOUD, there's your acronym for the night. So these life-saving drugs are as available as the drugs of death on the streets. Shannon is a wealth of knowledge and a powerful voice in this work. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Lautenbach. I really appreciate that. And I wanted to say thanks to all of the people who are here with the health department and also for Bellingham Public Library. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. So, what is addiction? That's going to be our topic tonight. So, my goal is to increase awareness among the general public. Addiction is a very common medical condition that can happen to any human being. Differences in the structure and function of the brain contribute to and exacerbate addiction. Most of these differences are unrelated to individual choices. We can take steps to reduce the risk of addiction, as well as reduce the harms associated with it. All of us have a stake in addressing addiction. It is a part of the human experience, which all of us are vulnerable to. Whether or not we become addicted to substances or behaviors depends on our history and our present, the context in which we live. Two young fish are swimming along together. They happen to meet an older fish swimming the other way, who nods to them and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And the two young fish swim on for a bit, and then eventually one of them looks over at the other and goes, "What the hell is water?" I grew up in Texas. When I was in college, I had the opportunity to live in Germany for about 6 months. When I first moved there, I remember feeling totally out of my element. People spoke and acted differently. They had different concerns, different interests. The smells, sounds, and tastes were different. The point of the fish story is that the most obvious, important realities are often the ones that are hardest to see and talk about. Many people believe there is a difference between us who are not addicted and those people over there who are. Many of us just assume there is something fundamentally wrong with them. They're not like us, and it's their fault. This thought is so pervasive, so obvious, that many of us don't really even think about it. As Mark Twain said, it's not the things we don't know that get us into trouble. It's the things we know for sure that just ain't so. Let's start with the definition. Addiction is any repeated behavior, substance-related or not, in which a person is compelled to persist, regardless of its negative impact on their life and the lives of others. Addiction is associated with an individual's inability to maintain control over their own behavior and continued daily substance use despite negative consequences. It is a chronic, relapsing, neurobiological disorder characterized by compulsive engagement in different activities despite increasingly adverse outcomes, which is amenable to treatment and recovery. Some people are, due to genetic predisposition and the environment in which they live, more likely to develop an addiction. Humans can become addicted to nearly anything that makes us feel good. And in our society, we sure do a lot of things that are supposed to make us feel good. Every year, the government interviews thousands of people ages 12 and up about their activities and their emotional state. This includes questions about substance use and mental health issues. In 2022, as you can see, about 50% of people in the United States in the last month admitted to drinking alcohol, 22% marijuana, 14% tobacco, and opioids, a little less than 3% of everyone in the country used opioids or by either prescription or illicitly. Fentanyl is probably a little bit more than what's listed here as 1 million, because it's so commonly the case that substances that people feel that they are using actually have fentanyl in it as well. Persons excluded from the survey include individuals experiencing homelessness who do not live in shelters, active military personnel, and residents of prisons, jails, nursing homes, and mental institutions. So here are the number of people in the United States that have a few of the substance use disorders. Alcohol, about 10% of the population has an alcohol use disorder. For marijuana, it's a little bit less. And as you can see for opioids, the number is large, but it's dwarfed by these others. Substance use disorder can be mild or moderate or severe, depending on the level of disordered behavior. Additionally, we can become addicted to a variety of different behaviors, including social media, shopping, exercise, sex, gambling, or phones. Let's take cell phone use as an example. Here are some of the signs of addiction applied to use of phones. Limiting phone use is difficult. Reaching for the phone immediately if alone or bored. Getting up at night to check on the phone. Having trouble completing duties at work, school, or home. Feeling less connected to family and friends. Becoming isolated. Having accidents or injuries due to phone use. Becoming angry or irritated if phone use is interrupted. Lying about phone use. Most substance use and behavior addictions occur in people who are like us, with homes, with social support. We don't see it or think about it because it's happening behind closed doors. I'd like to introduce a few terms which are helpful in thinking about addiction. Tolerance means one is needing more and more exposure to a given substance or experience to return to the desired state. Dependence develops when the presence of the substance becomes necessary to function normally. Withdrawal effects are negative feelings associated with removal of the substance or ceasing the behavior when a person is dependent. These effects can be annoying and uncomfortable, or with certain substances, extremely painful and even deadly. Eventually, people can experience cravings for substances or experiences to avoid painful withdrawal, or even just to return to normal. Increasing tolerance leads to more and more use to avoid these terrible feelings. This graph shows a common course of addiction. So progressing from casual use to using regularly to misusing and having some negative consequences. Abusing and having more and more trouble. And eventually dependence develops and withdrawal develops and cravings increase and the person develops addiction. Addiction is associated with adverse biological, psychological, and environmental conditions causing changes in brain cell structure. People can inherit traits that may increase or decrease the likelihood of addiction. About 50% of the risk of developing an addiction comes from our genes. In addition, events during our early life shape our psychological development. For people who experience a large number of traumatic events or chronically stressful circumstances, the risk of developing addiction can really skyrocket. For some people, between genes and adverse early life events, the risk of developing an addiction can go over 90%. As you can imagine, life is also extremely stressful and traumatic when a person is attempting to survive while their condition is untreated. These changes in brain structure are related to a reduction in neuroplasticity, which means it becomes harder for cells to change. This makes it harder and harder to learn new things, solve complex problems, plan for the future, or keep track of responsibilities. Similar changes occur with other neurological conditions, like a stroke or dementia. Many of these brain cell changes occur in parts of the brain that are involved in some of the deepest urges we have, like breathing or eating or caring for our children. They hijack our actions and our priorities. So imagine you are being compelled by urges arising from the core of your being to seek out substances again and again and again. It becomes harder and harder to focus on anything else in life. The addictive relationship can become the primary relationship. As problems continue to mount, they become increasingly harder to solve. At the same time, the addicted brain becomes less and less able to perform the complex actions that are needed to find relief from the addiction and change the course of life. Imagine yourself trapped underwater, unable to reach the surface. You're becoming more and more desperate. The need for oxygen overwhelms you, supersedes all other thoughts, desires, and priorities. Your whole purpose becomes getting your next breath. What would you not do to get to the surface? This is what addiction can be. I'd like to show a brief educational video about how addiction affects the brain.
There's a reward dial in our brains that regulates the amount of reward that we get from our experiences. This is the part of our brain that rewards us for doing things that are important for our survival and well-being. This part of the brain is like the volume dial on a stereo. It regulates the sound that comes out of the speakers and allows the experiences that we have to adjust the rewards and pleasure that we feel. Normally, this dial helps keep us healthy and functional, keeping us going back for experiences that are positive and rewarding. But in an addicted brain, the dial is recalibrated. The dial starts set at a lower position, and turning the dial up in a way that used to generate louder volume no longer has the same effect. The dial loses its ability to adjust for the rewards that people need. Once the addicted brain sets the baseline volume lower than it should be, people seek experiences that turn the dial higher and higher in an effort just to hear any reward volume at all. Helping people get their reward dials recalibrated back to healthy levels is hard, but with time and the right technicians and supports, the dial can be gradually reset.
Addiction can happen to anyone. I'd like to tell a story. Singapore is a small island city-state next to Malaysia. It has one of the highest population densities in the world. So there are many people there who need water for drinking and other activities. The island gets a lot of rain, about 4 times as much per year as Bellingham, but has few natural ways to collect that rain. Singapore is water stressed, and it is hard to get enough water for everyone. In the last century, there's been a lot of land development to accommodate population growth. Major changes in the environment have occurred. These changes led to increased risk of flooding, which can be extremely dangerous, as well as increased pollution. Years ago, a section of the Kallang River, which runs right next to the city, was altered to act as an overflow canal to help reduce the risk of flooding. And indeed, the canal did help avoid flooding, but it didn't do much to help the city's needs for water, because the water in the canal was difficult to collect. And given its location next to such a big city, the river was also quite polluted. Singapore had to import a lot of their water. People who lived on different sides of the canal rarely communicated. The people of Singapore recognized the situation had to change, so they did. We'll return to the story in a bit. Addiction is not a moral failing. It's not a choice. And it's not just about substances. And it's not always visible. It's rooted in circumstances, most of which are entirely outside of the individual's control. So, what helps? Understanding. Addiction is a medical condition, but recovery is often a long-term process that requires a combination of interventions. The path twists and turns in complex ways. It can be painful to watch people we love or are trying to help struggle. If you remember only this, almost no one chooses to become addicted. Almost no one chooses to act in ways that are harmful to themselves or others. Almost no one wants to need anything so much that it takes away everything else in their life. Meeting the basic human requirements of life is critical. Food, housing, safety, community, connection, meaning, and purpose. It is very hard to heal if you are constantly in survival mode. Similar to diabetes or hypertension, medical intervention and treatments is essential. This can include things like medication, and it can also include treating associated conditions due directly to substance use or to the living circumstances in which people with severe use live. Psychological counseling, addressing the trauma, assisting in behavior change, and treating other things like depression and anxiety and PTSD. Social care includes assistance with legal issues, resuming formal education, finding employment, case managers to help navigate our complex society. Harm reduction is a set of practical strategies and ideas aimed at reducing negative consequences associated with drug use. We use harm reduction all the time. Think of seatbelts, speed limits, birth control, medicine to control chronic conditions like diabetes and high blood pressure. Harm reduction is also a movement for social justice, built on a belief in and respect for the rights of people who use drugs, just like everyone else. They include opportunities to help people who are using substances and are not ready to cease their use, do it more safely to reduce the risk of harm to themselves and spread infection, cause other problems. It includes things like housing to make sure that people have a safe place to be, access to medication and other treatments, and referral and linkage so that when people are ready for it, they will have somewhere to go to heal. All individuals are more likely to access care if they are treated with respect and dignity and offered help rather than judgment. I have had the opportunity and the honor of witnessing many people recover when they have access to appropriate assistance and therapies. I wish everyone could know these transformations. People can and do heal. On that survey I spoke about earlier, 30 million people reported a history of addiction, and 70% of those people considered themselves to be in recovery or having recovered. So what can we do? We can support policies to improve life conditions. The Healthy Children's Fund is a wonderful example. The Healthy Children's Fund has made a direct impact on the lives of children and their families. And this is the beginning. This is at the root of all of the things that we're talking about and helping heal the community so that not as many people will develop these problems of addiction in the first place. The Justice Project, which is supported by the jail and public health ballot measure, will infuse millions of dollars every year into behavioral health, prevention, and proven jail reduction and recidivism prevention programs. We need to support local agencies doing this work, like the Opportunity Council, Lydia's Place, the Lighthouse Mission, the Food Bank, our schools, the public libraries. The situation we find ourselves in is very complex, but we humans are amazing problem solvers. Let's get back to Singapore. This was the result 4 years later. It took a lot of creativity, many people with different skills and tools working closely together, and lots of money. But where once there was a utilitarian concrete canal, there is now a living river. The new river ecosystem purifies the water naturally, reducing pollution and making the water safer to drink. The risk of flooding has decreased dramatically. People in different parts of the city are no longer divided by the canal. The city is more socially integrated. People spend more time outside together. These changes have increased the city's resiliency and improved the environment. As we all know, addiction has taken a terrible toll. It threatens the very fabric of our society. Finding solutions takes ingenuity, optimism, and understanding. This living river in Singapore is an example of what can happen when a community directs its resources to address large-scale problems in elegant ways. Addiction is part of the human condition. Casting those out who are ill, who are most in need of assistance, is cruel. It is also a foolish waste of critical resources. There are steps we can take to prevent the development of addiction and to provide appropriate support for those who are struggling. We can create a more functional and resilient society where we all see that there is no them, there's only us. These are my dogs. The Sausage, he's the smart one, and that's Olive over there. So thank you. If anyone has any questions or needed anything, let me know. Thank you all for listening. And now I would love to bring up our panelists.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lindsay, and I'm a grateful recovering addict. Standing up here in front of all of you makes me very nervous, but I'm honored to be here all the same, because these conversations are so important, especially considering the epidemic that addiction has become and the fact that it touches all of our lives, either directly or indirectly. I've been battling addiction for most of my life. Like many addicts, I started experimenting with drugs and alcohol at a young age. But it wasn't until I was 24 and a junior at Portland State University that I tried heroin for the first time. This was the drug that ensnared me, leading me to act against every moral fiber in my body, making me unrecognizable to myself and to the people who loved me. The first time I used heroin, I knew I was in trouble, but I had no idea just how much I had altered the course of my life. I had no idea that I would still be battling this beast I had awoken inside myself 15 years later. And although I experienced periods of clean time over the past decade and a half, and some good things happened in my life, most of the time I was in active addiction. Despite my struggles, I married the love of my life, and we just celebrated 11 years of marriage, and we have 2 beautiful children. However, my addiction caused me to lose everything more than once. My marriage was in shambles more than once, and I exposed my children to things that haunt me to this day. I was never content being a heroin addict, and I was always trying to quit. I tried locking myself in my bedroom and telling my drug dealers not to answer my calls more times than I could even begin to count. Of course, this never worked. I've never been able to put together any substantial clean time without going to detox, getting on Suboxone, and going to inpatient treatment. After each treatment, I thought I could maintain sobriety doing it my way, which was the easier, softer way. Instead of following the suggested steps, I just white-knuckled it. Sometimes I lasted a year before relapsing, but more often than not, I was using again within a few months. The last time I hit rock bottom and walked into a detox facility was June 13th, 2023. I knew I had to do things differently or I would end up in prison or dead. As soon as I got out of treatment, I started attending meetings, and I went to a meeting every single day for the first 3 months. In those meetings, I heard stories that I could relate to, showing me that I was not alone in my struggles and giving me a sense of belonging, which is something I had never felt before. I got a sponsor who I meet with every week. She's helping me through the 12 steps of Cocaine Anonymous. Working through the steps has allowed me to unload my resentments and process through the guilt and shame that weighed me down. I have developed a relationship with my higher power, who I call God. I talk to God every single day, asking him for guidance and strength. I go to church with my husband and my children every Sunday, which gives me the opportunity to be part of a community and something bigger than myself. I have a job that allows me to pay my bills and be a productive member of society. I no longer have to rely on other people to make sure that my children's needs are met. This gives me a sense of purpose. Of course, life still gets challenging, and some days I struggle. But now I have the tools that I need to deal with the curveballs that life throws at me, instead of running and trying to disappear into the oblivion of drugs. Today, I'm proud to be an addict in recovery. I'm proud to show my children that change is possible. It's hard, without a doubt, but it is possible, and if I can do it, anyone can do it. I truly believe that every addict out there today can change, because you are never too old or too far gone to start healing and living your best life. Thank you for listening.
Hey. My name is Dustin Stevens. I'm a man in recovery. I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm a brother, and I'm an uncle. In active addiction, I can't be any of those things. And I'm just so grateful to be here because my addiction took me to a hopeless place where I was resigned to dying from my addiction. And the fact that some people never gave up on me, my doctors, the lead program, I owe my life to. They never gave up on me, even when I was at my worst. I'm just so grateful to be here and to share part of my story. Thank you.
My name is Dania Aldridge. On 10/29 of 2013, I began my journey on the Red Road to recovery. I want to begin thanking the providers and the members of the librarian community for putting on this event. I really believe today's message will not only spread awareness, but will spread hope as well. As much as I hate to be another stereotype, growing up on the reservation, I was exposed to and eventually began drinking alcohol and using drugs at a very young age, to repeat the generational trauma that began long before my time. By a young age, at 11, I was drinking and smoking weed. I eventually became pregnant at 15. I gave birth at 16 years old. After my first child, I did clean up and I attempted enrolling into college to pursue my dream in healthcare. That was until I became imprisoned in a domestic violence relationship that led to heavier drug use, such as pills, heroin, meth, anything. Ultimately, my daughter was taken away. It started by losing her and anything and everyone around me. I found myself sick, alone, and miserable. This rock bottom was the foundation I used to build the life I have today. I eventually got into a domestic violence shelter, which helped place me into a treatment facility. And I eventually became a part of the MAT program, the Medication-Assisted Treatment Program, in which Dr. Boustead has helped me on that journey in a significant way. After 6 months, I eventually got my daughter back, and I believe by fate, I met my now husband, who has helped encourage a better life for myself and adding 2 sons into our lives. Although I maintained sobriety from drugs, I did eventually find myself struggling with alcoholism. Yet another toxic cycle in which I had to be honest and make a change. I had to be honest with myself and my support team, in which helped get me back into focus in pursuing my recovery and my dreams. I eventually enrolled into college, and to my surprise, I actually graduated with an associate's degree in medical science with honors. I now work in healthcare where I get to treat patients with cancer. And much like cancer, addiction is caused by a combination of factors: behavioral, psychological, biological, environmental. I urge you to please be a part of the change before change is absolutely needed. I thank you again all for this event and spreading awareness, and thank you for allowing me to change what has been my secret for so long to become my story today.
Hi, my name's Adam Cartman. I'm a community provider, physician in addiction medicine and treatment. I'm going to take a moment to say that I listened to the audio book that the library is providing on addiction, and I thought it was fantastic. And so if you haven't read it or listened to the audio book, I would encourage you to do so. The woman, Nzinga Harrison, who wrote it, narrates it. She's a great speaker, really positive person. And I just wanted to share that over the years, I've been amazed at all the people who find themselves in a really deep trouble, really sick and really hurting, often having overdosed and almost died, sometimes multiple times. And then their recoveries are just phenomenal. And I have so many patients at our office, and I have a group of partners. So we've been doing this for, I think, 16 years. We have a lot of people in long-term recovery with jobs, families, doing well, and we end up helping them with normal, what I would call aging medical problems. They get cancer, they have kidney stones, they break bones, and we end up helping them get through the painful conditions without relapsing to the drugs that they used previously. So I wanted to share the hope and the positivity that we see with people in recovery, and that keeps us all going.
Good evening. I'm Suzanne Carlson Prandini. I'm a librarian with the Bellingham Public Library. And it is truly a privilege, and I'm so grateful for your courage to be up on the stage with me this evening. It is no small feat to share the vulnerable parts of your life in such a public way. So thank you. Yeah. I would also like to thank the audience folks who contributed questions this evening. What we did is we consolidated those questions, so you might not hear exactly the way you worded your question, but we tried to incorporate as many aspects that people were asking about as possible. And then also, some of the questions, I want to mention that there is support and organizations out in the lobby. So if you are someone who is looking for additional answers, or something is said this evening that gets you thinking or feeling things that you want to check in with someone, there are people in the lobby available to you. So this is truly a community coming together to help grow and learn. I think I'm ready to start. How are you feeling? Okay. First question. What do you wish people knew about addiction or substance use disorder?
Well, Dr. Boustead said it already, that it's not a choice. And anytime I felt judgment from anybody, I would always think to myself, like, as awful as you may think about me, that's how I feel about myself tenfold. I've never met somebody in active addiction who wanted to be there, ever. So yeah, that's what I'd like people to realize.
Thank you.
Yes. There's no bad people. There's just bad choices, which I've made my share of. And that's a big part of with the challenges of recovery, is dealing with guilt and shame and fear. That's one of the things I'm trying to change, is facing my fears, like this being one of them, speaking in public. Yeah, I think it's just, we can't turn our backs on addiction and pretend it isn't there. You just don't ever give up.
Thank you. Next question? Okay. So some people talk about a rock bottom, and you had mentioned yours, Lindsay. I would love to hear, if folks are comfortable sharing, what that means for you, if you haven't already spoken to that.
I lost everything, like I said, several times. Being homeless and having $20, however I got it, and either choosing between eating and like feeling so hungry, it would feel like your stomach was like turning inside out, but buying drugs instead, and like not having any connection with my family because they'd cut ties because they had to. In life always had to get really uncomfortable for me to finally like take that step towards getting clean. So my rock bottom really was losing everything, and it gets pretty dark and low there. But yeah, in my experience, it has to get pretty uncomfortable for people before they are willing to take that step. Because if things are cushy for them, I think about people who have, a family member or a child who's an active addiction, and if things are comfy for them, a lot of times they're not going to take that step. You know what I mean? Like if they're getting their cell phone paid for, and nobody wants to kick their kid out, right? But ultimately, things have to get pretty uncomfortable.
I think rock bottom looks different for every individual. Obviously, different struggles, different barriers. Recovery is hard, but not recovering is even harder. And so it just depends on, just eventually finding that, support and that need for change, to want to change.
I've had several rock bottoms because I'm a chronic relapser over the past 20 years. Each time, things had to get a little bit worse for me to find the willingness to recover. I think the common thing in all rock bottoms is that the loss of values. We start finding ourselves doing things to support our addiction, things that we would never dream of doing. I never thought that I would be homeless. I never thought that I'd be eating food out of a trash can. I never thought I'd be living behind Walmart. But that's where my addiction took me. Unfortunately for many, rock bottom is death. And, my rock bottom was so low that I don't think I have another rock bottom besides death.
So hearing the three of you speak, one of the questions that came in asked exactly, how do you balance compassion with the need for accountability?
Just to me, as long as that person in your life, if you have to set these boundaries with them, right? But just as long as they know that you love them and that you'll help them in ways that will make them get help. But I think ultimately it's just, reminding them how much you love them, and it's like when they're ready to take those steps and make that change, that you'll be there to support them through that. But you certainly got to take, you have to set those boundaries for yourself. I know a lot of people who have loved ones. I mean, my in-laws, they've always been super supportive, and me and my husband both are recovering addicts, and we always knew that they loved us, but they'd have to stop talking to us a lot of times because we would steal from them, and we would manipulate them as much as we could to try to get money from them. I mean, we ripped them off so many times, it's embarrassing, really, but we always knew that they loved us, and as soon as we were ready to change, and we did, they were there for us, supporting us. So just to me, it's just like making sure that person knows that you love them, and when they're ready to change, that you'll be there to help them and support them through it.
So, yeah, the boundaries have to be established because it can be painful to see someone you love suffering, and yes, we can be manipulative when we're only thinking about uh, getting high, I guess. I think though it's important that there's a level of acceptance to where you can't turn your back on your family. You have to let them know that they're loved, but that maybe you have to love them from a distance. I don't know how else to answer.
I think the question was about compassion and accountability, yes? And I would just want to talk about public policy for a minute and people's opportunities to advocate for change in a positive way. We used to have a secure withdrawal management facility 16 years ago in Skagit County where people, when I was working in the emergency department, people could be involuntarily detained, not only for suicidal ideation, but because their drug and alcohol use was killing them. And they could be committed for 2 weeks and get help, medical help, with the withdrawal symptoms that drive the compulsion to keep using. And alcohol withdrawal can kill you. You need to give people medication so they don't have seizures and die. And with opiate use disorder, you just feel like you're going to die. We have county jails in every county in Washington State. We have very few secure withdrawal management or involuntary treatment centers. And I know lots of families who have a loved one who they see killing themselves want to get that person into treatment. And if they won't go voluntarily and it's severe enough, we have the laws on the books that they could be involuntarily detained, but we don't have the treatment facilities. And we don't have the treatment facilities because people aren't demanding it and because the healthcare system doesn't pay the money for it. Similarly, our hospital will admit you right away. If you're having a heart attack, you get in right away and you've got an hour to balloon time, an hour to medication. So you show up at the ER with an overdose, they wake you up, and if there's a reason to admit you, you may get admitted for a day or two. Often you're just turned back out on the street where you're going to go back and use again because you go into withdrawal and you know the one thing that's going to help you is continuing to use. So I think secure withdrawal management, or what we call secure detox, is something we need a lot more of. Probably every county in the state needs one.
I'm still sitting with the idea of death being accepted as the outcome and being okay with that. That's a really powerful thing to say. And that's a really dark place to go. What, in those moments, what did you find helpful when you were struggling, when you were in those dark places? What turned things around for you?
Sometimes just a smile from a stranger can give you so much hope. Just to see that you're being seen, see that you're feeling like a human being recognized. I mean, for me personally, that's all that could help sometimes in my darkest moments, is just being recognized and being like, okay, I still do matter.
For me, I wasn't in a place where I could make the decision to stop. Like I said, I was resigned to dying from my addiction. And for me, it took involuntary incarceration. I got arrested and put in jail and forced to detox. And that's when I had a moment of clarity. That's when I was able to make a choice. And the fact that in particular the lead program, they always came out and visited me when I was living in the camps. They'd take me to the doctor, or they'd sometimes just buy me lunch or a coat. But the fact that they didn't give up on me made me believe that I didn't have to give up on myself. And yeah, that's.
One thing that always helped me when I was in my darkest places was knowing that we are really lucky, especially in Washington, because there are so many options available to us. Dr. Cartman's been there with me through much of my journey, and even when I would go to get my prescription to Suboxone and I would pee dirty, there was no judgment. He would just work through it with me, and every time I went back to him, because I too am a chronic relapser, he just accepted me back with no judgment and open arms, and just knowing that was there was really helpful when I was in those really dark places.
Thank you. So, how would you approach a friend or a family member about their addiction? Do you have some thoughts or advice?
Just, letting them know that change is possible. Like I said, it's really hard to change, but it's absolutely possible, and that I would express to them how much I love them and let them know that once they were ready, that there were a lot of options available to them to help them not just get through the initial detox and treatment and stuff, but there are so many programs out there to help people get on their feet and find housing, find jobs, and get their life on track and maintain sobriety. It's really important to work a recovery. I've found, it's like I said, there were so many times I went to treatment and I got out and I didn't work a recovery. So there are all kinds of meetings going on all the time, whether it's AA or CA or NA. So yeah, I would just make sure that they knew that when they were ready to take that step, that there were a lot of options for them.
Let them know how much it's going to hurt if they die. Tell them you're going to be pissed off at them when they're gone, and let them know how much they mean to you. And like she said, there's many options for help. The important thing is, I mean, for me, I can't do recovery alone. I need help, and I have to ask for it though, and I have to want it. But yeah, I would just say, let them know that it's not just all about them. They have an effect on you.
So now I'm realizing that I have some curiosity around systems. How did you know where your next stepping stone was to recovery? What is that process like as far as how do you get from one point to another?
I feel like a lot of the time you don't. It's about having that guidance, about finding that support team that will help kind of, I don't want to say direct you. Like I said, the MAT program, Dr. Boustead's clinic was huge and impactful in helping me find resources and utilizing things that I didn't even know existed here in Whatcom County. So it's just about finding that area and then, even just asking questions, being honest, saying, hey, where can I go to have a place to sleep tonight? Just being open and honest, asking those questions and finding a good support team, going into a clinic, just being vulnerable enough to say, I need help.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. And like he said, asking for help and, vocalizing what it is, what your needs are. And, you'd be amazed at how quick people are willing to help you when you're doing the right thing. And when you're doing the right thing, good things happen really quickly, honestly. It's always amazed me. In my journeys in recovery, that once I started, doing the right thing and once, I would just always think like the next right step, and good things happen.
I've had to let go of my will and take the suggestions of people who've laid the road ahead of me. The first step is I went to detox. They asked me if I want to go to treatment, and I said, well, if you think I need to go to treatment. So I went to treatment, and from there, they recommended that I live in a sober living. So that's where I went next. In sober living, they recommend that I go to 12-step meetings. So I go to 12-step meetings. At 12-step meetings, they recommend I get a sponsor and work steps. So I do that. I still work with the LEAD program, and I still meet with my caseworker once a week, and he helps keep me on track with my goals. He has a lot of suggestions too. Anytime somebody who knows what they're doing suggests that I try something, I try it. And my life gets better when I do that. It's when I stop doing those things, when I stop showing up, that's when I get complacent, I get comfortable. That's when I fall back into old thinking, old ways. And it's an everyday battle. Like I have to do something every day to acknowledge my disease, or else it takes over. But as long as I acknowledge it every day and ask for help and use the help, I'm going to be okay. I just have to suit up and show up.
So first off, I just wanted to say I love stories like this. It's so optimistic because the pieces are starting to work. We're starting to have a continuum of care. We're starting to have people who you're at the end of one section of the treatment program, you're given advice and assistance on accessing the next and the next and the next. There's a lot of places where that is still very much not the case. There's lots of people who do very well the work that they need to do for the people that they see in their system. And they do everything they can, but then once that person leaves and it's outside of their control, then things can fall apart. I would just ask anyone here, have you ever had trouble making it to a doctor's appointment? Have you ever gone to the dentist and then the dentist isn't there, and then, what do you do with that? You've been to the pharmacy, your insurance, you don't know where your insurance card is, or they've got the wrong one on file, and then it's going to be $800 for a medication. One time I had to do a prior authorization for aspirin for a patient. There's so many barriers in our lives, and people with all of the support. And so then you have people who are doing everything that they can that need help, And if we leave the barriers in place, then we lose the opportunity to really help people. There's a lot of people that I see that they go through treatment 10, 15 times because as soon as they leave, they're going back to where they were before and they don't have the support that they need. It's terribly frustrating, I'll be honest with you. So, I mean, I'm really, really glad and grateful that we do get to see people. Like I say, I get to see a lot of people who have made it despite all of the challenges and the hurdles that we put in people's in front of them. But there's a lot more that we could do if we could accept this as one of the struggles that everyone has rather than a reflection of who someone is.
Well, that's actually perfect because my next question is, dun-dun-dun, what do you think our community needs to better help people struggling with addiction?
More accessibility. I know there's been times where I was getting clean and on my way to treatment, and then all of a sudden there's no beds. I'm trying to practice and I'm trying to work my recovery, and then once again I'm left back where I started, and it's defeating. It begins to be defeating. So having accessibility services, getting to doctor's appointments, having treatment beds available, having detox places, that actually support rather than, okay, let me put a Band-Aid on it, you're okay, out the door. I really feel accessibility.
I feel what helped me the most is access to treatment in jail. When I was in jail, I wanted to stay clean, and I talked to reentry services about, can I go to treatment directly from jail? And the cards just didn't fall out that way. I was released back out on the street, no place to go. But yeah, access to treatment when I'm willing is, I mean, there's like small windows of opportunity that an addict is willing to get clean. And if they get turned down, they're going to change their mind real quick.
Right.
I think that more understanding in the community and in each of us in our lives as we see people who are struggling and doing our best not to judge them, so that and what that can do is open us up to the idea in all of our professional lives that we will not treat them lesser than we would want to be treated. I think that a large part of the problems that we face really are, especially in like the helping community, so in hospitals and physicians' offices and places like that, you see people who have a problem, you give them advice and they don't take it, or they keep coming back to you over and over and over again because they don't have the rest of the supports. And you don't have the control over the rest of the supports. All you're seeing is someone who keeps coming in and is suffering, and the same thing over and over and over. It can cause burnout, and I think that happens for lots of us. Even if you're seeing the same person, the same people, in an alleyway or something like that, it just causes this fatigue of this kind of sense of hopelessness. And so what I think is really important is when you can start to see people that are changing, like seeing folks here who have changed their lives, and allowing that to start changing the narrative in your mind such that you're not immediately looking at someone over there like, well, write them off. Why should we waste money on someone like that who doesn't want help? And, the best thing we can do is just remember that that relapse is a thing that is real. It is a part of the process. And just because someone is, at the bottom of the basement today doesn't mean that's the end. So I see folks who have done well for years, some terrible thing happens in their lives, and they fall off and they're gone for a while. And every time they come back, I'm so happy to see them again, you know, that they're still alive, that they're trying. And so even having that sense of, when you're talking to someone, of like hope, and feeling that you really hope the best for them, that really matters a lot, because it matters for the other person, but it also matters for you and for us, because we all need to have hope about this to get it better.
Thank you. Let's see, we have time for about 2 more questions. How would you talk to kids about addiction? And I want to clarify why I'm using addiction and substance use disorder, because I realized I have in my mind thoughts around those words. Substance use disorder assumes that you're using a drug or alcohol or a substance. Addiction is a much broader topic, and so I'm trying to broaden. I'm trying to go more broadly with this question. So, how do you talk to kids about addiction?
I mean, I know how I talk to my kids about addiction. You know, I am just really open about, and obviously they witnessed, you know, firsthand me and their dad's struggle. And, you know, I just make sure that they're aware that, you know, they can talk to me about anything, and it's an open dialogue. And if they are have questions about it, they can ask me. If, you know, they use something, they can tell me. You know, it's an open line of communication with my kids. So yeah, that's how I talk to my children about it.
What I'm kind of picking up is like, you might notice some characteristics in your children that might be warning signs of substance use disorder, addiction to the phone, or other behaviors. I think that it's really important to have the discussion about substances before it becomes a problem, instead of just pretending like it, you know, keeping it the skeleton in the closet is no good. Because these drugs today are deadly, and it only takes one time. And so it's really important to have the discussion when they're at an age before they're even experimenting, and to bring awareness, and just to let them know that you love them no matter what, that they can talk to you about it, that I think just making them, like, I don't know, in my experience, I would get in a lot of trouble if I got caught using drugs. So that made me hide it and not talk about it with my parents. And so I think it's just important to let them know that as long as they're honest with you, things are going to be okay, and we can move forward.
I think being open and honest, answering those, vulnerable questions. I still have parents who are actually in active addiction right now. And so explaining to my kids in a way they can understand at their age, this is an illness, be compassionate, but still maintaining healthy boundaries, and that's okay. Answering questions about, why this, how come that, and just really explaining that this is an illness to be compassionate for and understanding, but reminding them of certain consequences that do come with certain actions.
and I'm going to make a pitch again for a piece in this book by Dr. Harrison, the Unaddiction book. She's got a section in the back called My Addiction Family Tree. Lots of kids in elementary school or when they're growing up are asked to go home and ask your grandparents, ask your family, where were their ancestors from? How did they live and so on. And she has the whole thing about looking at your family tree and the role of genetics, the role of the environment, culture and history and social determinants of health, how all of these things come together and impact you. And then, of course, nowadays we have things like fentanyl, which wasn't even around when heroin was the big problem. And before that, we had OxyContin and the prescription opiate epidemic, and it goes all the way back to opium. We've had all these different eras of different substances and different addictions, and trying to navigate the whole thing. Anyway, again, she does a wonderful job going over some of these things that you might talk about with your children.
I love that you read the book. Okay, so that brings us to our final question. What brings you hope around this topic?
Exactly what we're doing tonight. This is a really big deal, and just the awareness and that people are wanting to get educating and wanting to know how to talk to people about it and what they can do, and that's a really big deal. That gives me a lot of hope.
So I was really surprised this last time getting clean and starting to deal with like some of my legal problems. Actually, compassion from the judges and the prosecutors, and the fact that I was already doing the stuff that they wanted me to do. They basically gave me this idea, this feeling that they actually genuinely cared and wanted my life to get better instead of just trying to put me in a hole somewhere, I guess. And events like this give me hope for my kids' generation. Just the discussion, the awareness of the community, and the change. I have faith that this community will come together and find a solution.
Yeah, an event just like this where we're able to talk about it. Let's discuss it instead of seeing it as just a problem. Okay, well, how can we find a solution? What can we do to build solutions? How can we come together as a community to fix this? How can I myself as an individual contribute? And hopefully something that was shared here today could inspire at least one person or give awareness to one person and be able to see things differently and just come together as a community and start building towards a solution.
I think that the more we can speak honestly about the problems that we face with each other, the more we allow our children to have the ability and the space to speak honestly with us, also allows us to intervene when problems are beginning, when there's problematic use or people are developing a problem early on. It's so much easier to start the process of healing than once someone has many of the other associated problems that we see people having. I love the idea of the first time someone goes to treatment, the first time they have an overdose, the first time they go to jail, that's the time that everything's available that they might need, rather than it being the 5th time or the 10th time. Because if we did that, we'd be a lot more likely to help people stay out of the system and stress the system, themselves, their bodies, their families. The earlier we can get to it, the better it works. And the only way we can do that is by increasing understanding, empathy, and making sure we have plenty of options.
Okay. I am, again, so grateful for your courage and your bravery, for being willing to share this hard-won knowledge with us. It's really overwhelming. And I so appreciate that you were willing to stand and sit on this stage with me and talk this evening. So again, I'd like to remind folks that there are resources out in the entry area. And at this time, I would like to say thank you again to the panelists, and please join me in a round of applause for them. And Rebecca, I'll turn it over to you at this time, and we will depart the stage.
Wow, I know I speak on behalf of everyone here when I say thank you. Thank you to Dr. Boustead for sharing your expertise, the presentation, and thank you to our amazing panelists for sharing your lived experience, your knowledge, and your stories. I also want to take a minute to thank Antone and Panelist George for offering the prayer blessing at the beginning of our evening, and to Helen Koenig for providing the beautiful music that has so enriched our event. And Helen is going to be returning to the stage here in just a couple of minutes, and she will be closing out our evening as we exit the auditorium. And please, there's no rush. We don't have to be out until 10 o'clock. So if you want to take a minute to talk with our panelists, or explore the resources in the lobby, or just sit and listen to the music for a few minutes, please, you're welcome. We are also deeply appreciative of our partners who help make this event possible, including the City of Bellingham Mayor's Office, Whatcom County Health and Community Services, as well as our wonderful collaborators at Compass Health, Peace Health, and Whatcom Community College. Your support has been invaluable. And speaking of support, our program tonight would not have been possible without the funding support of the Friends of the Bellingham Public Library. Thank you, friends. As we have heard expressed so eloquently here this evening, addiction is a complex issue. But as a community, as we also have heard, we can make a difference by continuing to engage in these important conversations, by reducing stigma, and by supporting those impacted by addiction with compassion. If you haven't yet, and as Suzanne mentioned, I really encourage you to explore the resources that are in the lobby tonight. And we've also set out a feedback table so you can share your thoughts and impressions of tonight's event. And we hope you will take a moment to do so. Thank you again, everyone here, for attending and for participating in the conversation tonight. We hope that you leave here tonight with a renewed sense of hope and a stronger connection with each other and with our community. So have a great night and be safe. Thank you.